Hello, everyone. It's Clay Jenkinson. I'm back in my rig after an incredible day. I went to the source of the Missouri River today, and I went to the alternative source. Now, the source that Lewis went to on August 11th, 1805, was Lemhi Pass up at Sacagawea State Park. I've been there a number of times. I'm going again in a couple of days. Stay tuned for that. But the true source, or the greater source, is at Upper Red Rock Lakes, right north of Yellowstone National Park, not so far from Henry's Lake, or not so far from Ennis, Montana. It's Hell Roaring Creek. It's farther from the Gulf of Mexico than any other tributary creek of the Missouri system. So there's a sign there that says, this is the utmost source of the Missouri. So I always collect water at such places. I'm going to write a little note here to myself. So this is water, Hell Roaring Creek, Missouri. So I'm going to affix that to this. Otherwise, when you get home 6 months from now, is that from the Danube? Is that from the Ohio? No, it's from the source. And listen to what Mr. Jefferson said. He went to France in 1784. He'd been a widow for a couple of years. He had a romance with a woman named Maria Cosway, a painter, a musician, a famous beauty, a kind of what was known then as a coquette, a woman who specialized in driving men crazy. And many men succumbed, and Jefferson among them. And he had to part with her. She was married. It was a lighthearted, probably not consummated relationship, but certainly the last time that Jefferson, I think, could really say that he was in love, depending on how you try to negotiate the whole Sally Hemings question. But leaving that aside, when Mrs. Cosway and her husband went back to England, he wrote a famous 11-page letter with his left hand. He'd broken his right, called My Head and My Heart. And towards the climax, if I may say so, of this great letter, here's what happens. He invites Mrs. Cosway and, if necessary, her husband, to come to the United States. The falling spring, the Cascade of Niagara, the passage of the Potomac through the Blue Mountains, the Natural Bridge. It is worth a voyage across the Atlantic to see these objects, much more to paint and to make them and thereby ourselves known to all ages. Then he goes into this lovely thing about Monticello, where you're above the storm and looking off at the distant water. And then he says this, I hope in God no circumstance may ever make either Mr. or Mrs. Cosway seek an asylum from grief. With what sincere sympathy I would open every cell of my composition to receive the effusion of their woes. I would pour my tears into their wounds. And now listen, and if a drop of balm could be found at the top of the Cordilleras or at the remotest sources of the Missouri, I would go thither myself to seek and bring it. And if a drop of balm, meaning water, could be found at the top of the Continental Divide or at the remotest sources of the Missouri, I would go thither myself to seek and to bring it. Well, he was never going to go that far into the West. He never traveled farther than 75 miles west of his birthplace. But he sent Meriwether Lewis. Lewis was there on August 11th, 1805. Here's what Lewis said. At the distance of 4 miles farther, the road took us to the most distant fountain of the Missouri River, in search of which we have spent so many restless days and toilsome nights. Thus far I had accomplished one of those grand objects upon which my mind has been unalterably fixed for many years. Judge then of the pleasure I felt in slaking my thirst with this pure and ice-cold water which issues from the base of a low mountain or an high hill. 2 miles below, Hugh McNeil, one of the men, 2 miles below, McNeil stood with 1 foot on either side of this little rivulet, and thanked his God that he had lived bestride the mighty and heretofore deemed endless Missouri River. That's why we read this. That's why we study this. That's why we follow their footsteps. Meriwether Lewis was a genius, a troubled genius to be sure, but an absolutely amazing man. And when he was writing, he's easily the best writer of the entire expedition. So I have this balm, and I'm willing to use it to assuage a dear friend's grief, should that ever happen. What a day. We'll see you down the trail.